Hello and welcome. My name is Marnie, and I'm so honored today to introduce my dear friend from Hawaii, Keone Hanalei from Pohala Hawaiian Botanicals. And we are going to be talking about something that is dear to my heart, and most importantly, something that I learned, I think, very intimately with you, brother, was this reconnection to self through alchemizing the spirits, the elements, the reconnection to ancestors, and then really practicing that and embodying it. But over time, like we've had such beautiful connections to nature and the way that we have toned together, chanted together in nature, and listened to everything that's happening around us in the unseen world. And I really want to welcome in this concept as well as this conversation that I think is really important right now on the healing spiritual journey for people. And that is this journey into self, of understanding who they are, what their lineage is, what their DNA is, what their epigenetics are, but also what their gifts are, what the wisdom is there, and how do they bring that out, and how do we honor our ancestors and rediscover our roots. So welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Oh, welcome to yes, thank you. And I just want to also say thank you so much for acknowledging the ancestry and the ancestors. And so I also bring in my kupuna, my elders, my ancestors as we have this conversation. Of course, this is something that's dear to me as well because a large portion of my body of work, if not my entire body of work, is greatly supported and also influenced by my ancestors and my ancestry. So happy to have this conversation with you, sis.
Mm, yes, I can feel it. And this whole section is about the power of alchemy, ritual, archetypes, symbols, mythology, our ancestors, and how important that is in terms of maybe stepping onto this path of like really conscious living. And I know this is a conversation that we have within our own communities, but really it's about rediscovering yourself in a way that is feeling very authentic. And how do we do this? How would you invite people to start reconnecting to their roots and whatever they find there, right? Because it's not always going to be beautiful, a beautiful lineage. We've done a lot of things in our time here on earth. um, a lot of war, a lot of anger has happened. So we're all trying our best, but I think embracing these deep parts of ourselves is part of the healing journey. And where would you feel is important for people to start understanding the power of alchemy?
Yeah, I first want to share, I feel and I've experienced myself engaging in a world where I felt that there's always a destination to get to. And so, first, I will invite the audience to just recognize and acknowledge that perhaps the destination is within you. You're the destination. And so, like, that's the great pivot point, or that's the great launch place. Instead of always feeling this need to have to get somewhere, what if you are that destination? And I feel like that's really important. And that's what allowed me to tap so beautifully and fluently into my own lineage, is when I was no longer so compelled to get somewhere. I recognize that I myself am that point of convergence. And especially when we talk about alchemy, that's going to be really important to know that the self is a point of convergence. The definition of alchemy is one of the definitions of alchemy is the combination of things. And so, what we can perceive and what's obvious to us is that this third dimensional realm and all the dimensions which follow the third dimension, it's comprised of contrast. It just is. It's a world of contrast. And so then we bring in that definition of alchemy, which is the combination of things. Okay, well, where does that all get to converge at?
Mhm.
And so when we recognize the self as the destination, then we can behave as that proper, appropriate, and even responsible place of convergence where we can now alchemize the perceptions of life.
It's beautiful. I love that. And just kind of jumping into what that means. And I know we have lots of different representations of alchemy and ritual and magic and calling in elements and many, many different ways that civilization has done this over time. And of course, that can be in the masculine embodiment and the feminine embodiment. It's existing in nature all the time. How would you feel is the most important thing? Some people gravitate towards certain elements. Some people gravitate more towards maybe fire, maybe water, maybe air, maybe plants, maybe, all kinds of different things. Where would someone start? Because I think it's important to like just define what it is to like call in and alchemize. But how do we go into what nature is trying to talk to? How are they trying to talk to us? What is the advice here?
Yeah, well, I'll speak from my own experience in that I feel the most relevant thing to tap into right now, and perhaps the most generous thing, and something that is just really contemporary, I feel, for right now in this evolutionary cycle that we're all experiencing, is the fifth element. And I'm going to be really careful not to give too much definition so that the audience can come to their own conclusion, but I'll sort of give an idea of how to come into recognition or remembrance of the fifth element. Let's take all those other elements, right? Fire, water, wind, earth, and what represents all of those?
Mhm.
Remember, we're coming into a convergence. That's what I feel is most relevant about humanity at this point right now.
Mhm.
And so that convergence point is also that fifth element.
Mhm.
And in order for us to really tap into what's occurring right now on an evolutionary scale, which is so colossal and so gigantic, it's really hard for us to fathom that. And this is why, on a collective basis, so many people are going into like bouts of mania and
Mhm.
psychosis. I mean, the rate of suicide is really unprecedented. And
Yeah.
I feel like there's so much overwhelm right now because this is actually where we are on a collective level. This is the evolutionary cycle to which we've reached.
Mhm.
And in like my conversations with my kupuna, my conversations within my own iwi kuamo'o, my spinal cord, which in my culture, Mu Hawaiian, that's the Akashic record. And everything is sharing fifth element, converge in fifth element. So I would invite the audience, and of course you as well, sister, but when we take all those elements, fire, earth, air, water, and just for a moment, if they were to converge and harmonize in a way, what word or how could you describe that? And for me, of course, I've done this. I actually did a series, virtual series on this. And what came through for me is
Mhm.
spiral. And we can even feel that the fifth element is that which is informing us on how to proceed from this point of great evolutionary change.
Mhm.
And so now my work, right, in order to properly engage with the evolutionary cycle that is presented unto us, is my fluency in spirals will truly determine how I'm able to continuously show up, make contributions, to engage without feeling that overwhelm.
Mm. I'm just gonna let that sit for a little bit.
Yes.
I feel it's really important for us to thank you for all of that. And I can see I'm such a visual learner, so I can see the energies of the whole system working together and converging into this embodiment of the human incarnation. And so going back to self, like you are the key, you're the master key of your own universe, and how you decide to reconnect to your own lineage and then express that spiral out into the world is really where we're going to shift humanity right now. And we are at an extremely pivotal point in terms of how do we do this. And so we want to make this very almost practical, right? Of course there's beauty in magical consciousness of we're enlightened, we're raving with beautiful pranic energy, we're just glowing, we're spreading our beautiful cosmic seed across the plains. It's like we can, yeah, like this is what humanity is going through right now. And we have a lot of beautiful people who are doing the work, who are healing themselves, they're healing intergenerational trauma, they're being of service to the plants, to the animals, to the earth, to their communities, to their families. And so we see this movement happening, and yet we need to be, pretty steadfast and consistent in our spiritual practice. And that takes us into the everyday practical magic, I want to call it, of reconnecting to self and reconnecting to your amakua, your ancestors, whoever they might be. And I know we did something together where we went in and called in, 7 generations back, at places that we went to as special sacred spots. And I think I want to invite the audience, to really start to look at your lineage and see if you can trace at least 7 generations back. If not, start to investigate that. Start to really start asking. And if you're orphaned or if you're adopted, just go into possibly your spiritual counsel, maybe possibly the plants that are talking to you, nature that is talking to you. There's always support and guidance here.
And that's one of the big questions I get, or even the concerns I get when people approach me about their lineage and their ancestry, is adoption, and then also if they're orphaned. And I like to remind people, I'm a little more fluent in this than a lot of other people, but that doesn't exclude anyone from coming into like a mastery of it as well. But reading your iwi kuamo, your spinal cord, which is the Akashic record of your incarnation here, but also your entire human lineage and beyond the human lineage into the cosmic lineage as well. And so coming into a fluency of that, and it's really difficult to attempt to teach someone to do that without pulling them into my lineage. And this is one of the disruptions I feel when people become so inspired by those who have been archivists, proper archivists of either themselves or their lineage, is people become pulled into those rather than defining for themselves what their lineage is and what that lineage, what codes or what legacy that lineage is offering. For Mu Hawaiians, the significance of the 7 generations, and we hear this so often with so many cultures, Native Americans uniquely, but the Mu Hawaiians, the 7 generations is important because every 7 generations, the legacy repeats itself. And so me, with my 7th generation, her name is Vivi Hoiva. I'm following the line of the mitochondria. I even have this ring that I wear. Her name is on my ring because me and Vivi Hoiva, as my 7th generation ancestor, we're identical when it comes to our body of work or our kiakahi, why we're here. And so having this relationship with my 7th generation ancestor, it's revealing, but it's also just supportive. I feel supported. And, that sense of support also brings perhaps someone into a sense of feeling like they're in the authority of how they show up in the world. I was talking to Marnie prior to this, and one of I feel the triggers that comes up for a lot of people when they're either exploring, experimenting with their body of work, is so many people are afraid of being exposed as a fraud. And yes, that's valid. Of course, I feel that's very valid, but the solution is also very simple. Don't be a fraud. And so that's an invitation to come into your authenticity, just like you were sharing, Marnie, is rather than doing the imitation, how can I come into a point of authenticity with the resources that exist within me? Remember, I'm the final destination. It's just about a method of extracting, exhuming that which is here in the final destination. And then if I so choose to offer it as a kind of contribution. Now you're in the authority of that to whom you say you are.
So wonderful. And listening to that, it just makes me just love you so much more, brother. I just love you. And I feel that it's so wonderful to really, to me, this is the point in humanity. And I don't want to get teary-eyed, but I might get teary-eyed, but this is where we're really sharing our heart center. I remember when I first met you, like, I was like, I jumped back. I don't know if you remember, but I was like, oh my God, a rainbow just came out of your heart. And I was so blown away by how open you were. And it was like, I saw right into, your Akashic record through your heart. And I remember I was like, oh my God, I've made it. I've made it in life. I've met somebody who is authentically living like this. And I would never, and I still am on the lookout for other rainbow-hearted warriors who are living openly, but it's this beautiful combination, right? Which I think you were saying before, of this spiraling, of this activation within, of this alchemizing within, going into ourself, opening up our DNA, opening up the 33 vertebrae, living authentically, honoring where we're from, honoring all of it, the good, the bad, the shadow, the positive. I mean, it's all in there, right? And we need to embrace all parts of ourselves. And then it's like, okay, how do we alchemize this and step forward into, in Buddhism, we call like bodhisattva, right? Into our highest level of incarnation, to then be of service and then to really live selflessly and unanimously in coherence with everybody,
Yeah,
where we're just in boundless, joyous love all the time. So, I
yeah,
mean, yes, that's like the goal. And yes, we're all doing our best to get there. And
yeah.
would you give some examples of some exercises or some things that people can start doing on a daily basis that will really help them to call in the elements, call in their ancestors? I know for myself, I have certain symbolisms, whether, it is like I'm very attached to the lotus and I'm very attached to shells in particular. Like I have them all over the house. Um, so there's certain elements of symbology that I kind of go into of what my ancestors, I have a lot of pagodas everywhere, and of course that goes in towards my Asian ancestry. But for my Irish Scottish side, I definitely have like a lot of greens and blues around me all the time. So allowing that to come out of you is important in terms of surrounding yourself with your inner self, I think is something that I'm trying to say here. But
Yeah.
how about some instruction for our listeners?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, morning too, because it's so important for, that like inland empire or that perception of the self to also be livable.
Mhm,
Livable. And so how can we make that practical in our lives? And like how you're sharing, I'm going to surround myself with the things that are attuned to my lineage, attuned to the culture to which my genetic code comes from. And I would most certainly encourage you to do that. Marnie, you're so good at encouraging people of creating altars.
mhm,
Altars, it's a physical space that you can visually see and be reminded of something, but it's also a place where you can go to seek counsel.
mhm,
And
mhm,
especially when I'm resurrecting and exhuming something that is so mysterious to me, it's really supportive to hold counsel with something,
mhm,
to express my availability for something to become extracted. And one of the greatest ways to begin, aside from I'm the direction,
mhm,
right? And let's get over all those things that say that's arrogant and that's egotistical. No, I'm the direction, I'm the destination. And I will encourage everyone to have that as a base composite so that things can meet you. For a majority of my life, Marnie, I remember waking up in the morning and being overwhelmed because I'm like, how am I going to have to adapt to the world today?
yeah,
Am I going to have to mimic? Who am I going to have to compete with? What am I going to have to do in order to just belong in the world? My whole life changed the morning I woke up and I said, oh, the world also gets to adapt to me.
mhm,
And I felt such relief
yes,
and just allowance that the world can meet me But this is rational now. If I'm calling in the world to meet me, well, I better give instructions.
Mm,
I better be clear about who I am so
mhm.
that the world has an invitation to meet me as well. If I'm mimicking someone else, if I'm mimicking someone's body work, if I'm plagiarizing, I'm giving the world directions to meet someone else.
Yes.
Not why would the world come to me when I'm giving it directions to go to someone or someplace else? And so coming into accountability of who and what I am on even the most biological level, your genetic code. Come into fluency of that so you can come into the confidence and remember the key word, the authority.
Mhm.
The authority. And so from that place of saying, I am the direction, I am the destination, a huge method of support for everyone is whatever it takes for your spinal cord to become limber.
Mm.
It's locked, brah. It's locked. And you know, if you're plagiarizing, if you're in copyist culture, you're gonna be tense because I don't want to be found out. Or I don't know how to answer the questions that are going to come my way. And I say this very often, and this is not arrogance, but I say when it comes to who I am and my body of work, my ancestry, there is no question I cannot answer.
Mhm.
I'm limber. I'm not like, oh, I better, what's going
Right.
to be asked of me? I'm like,
Expensive.
yeah, I'm available to
Right.
answer the questions. I'm in the authority. And so whatever it takes for you to come into true flexibility of your spinal cord and even to kind of amplify that support, go into your genetic ancestry and see how the culture has made flexible the spinal cord. What have
Mm.
they done? Because your genetic code is really going to respond to that because you're coded with that. It's
Yeah.
going to be an inherent memory that just needs to be activated. Once it's activated, friends, your spinal cord is going to open up.
Yes.
Closure. And this is, the time of great disclosure. Once your spinal cord opens up, this was like mine. I went through a dark age in my life
Mhm.
out of a sense of necessity. Like I need to shield, I need to hide myself. And so I went through this like dark period. And then the resurrection and the opening of my spinal cord, I had to go through certain things in my life in order to achieve that. But I remember that moment where it was like a tingling sensation and it just went and it, oh, and
Mm.
the whole world
Mm.
became friendly, and I just relaxed into it.
What a gift. Such a gift, really, to be able to experience that. Not so many people get to experience that, and they're still searching and they're still looking for how do they feel safe in their own body. And I think that it's achievable. I just really want to encourage everybody that this is one part of the puzzle, which is a very important part in the healing journey. And we need to take the time to rediscover ourselves and rediscover our roots. And as you said, like it could be that your people were water people and you need to be in the water a lot. You need to activate through swimming. You could be mountain people and you need to activate through climbing that Himalayan mountain and chanting with monks at the top. Like you could be in the forest. I mean, there's so many ways. And so this is a point of convergence that I wanted to talk about. And the altar is always a beautiful representation in your home or in your space. And it could be a traveling altar. It could be a very small figurine that you take with you everywhere. It could be an amulet that you have around your neck, a ring that you have on your finger. It could be something that's a candle that you take to a temple or to a sacred site or to a special place in the forest. It could be in your yard. It could be in your bedroom. It could be anywhere. But it's
Mhm.
just the concept of this convergence to alchemize
Mhm.
and having the focused intention of reverence and practicing devotion to self over and over and over again, right? No matter
Yes.
where you are. And if there's big moments in your life where you're called into nature, you're called into a sacred site. I feel this happening a lot. People are being called into areas all over the world. And I truly feel it is a genetic activation to be called to these specific sites
Yeah.
magnetized to these specific sites to be activated. I've gone through them myself. Called to Egypt, called to Ireland, called to Scotland, called to the South Pacific, called to all areas in Asia, called to Europe. And that will constantly change, which I think is also how we're living lots of deep parallel lives right now. And we're being more conscious of our complete embodiment of our soul incarnation.
Yeah.
But what do you think about being this convergence and having, thank you for the altar idea, which I have for people, but also, this exploration of calling in the elements and alchemizing in nature and sacred sites?
Yeah. And, Marnie, thank you for sharing all of that. Part of the reason why that fifth element is so important is because if you come into that convergence point and the recognition of the fifth element, you're fluent in all the elements. And so one of the points of mimicry or plagiarism is, oh, I have to be in the water because that's what I feel called to right now, or that's what I'm inspired by when I view someone else. So now you're even forcing yourself to be in an element that may not be naturally your rhythm at that current time. But when we come into the fifth element, you're fluent in all the elements. And so whatever is relevant for you at this current moment, that's where you naturally be guided to. Because I was sharing too, the oscillation to which we are experiencing right now as organic beings is very significant, to the point where many people are checking out.
Yeah.
And the way that we can engage and withstand the oscillation to which we're experiencing right now, that's why I feel fifth element, fifth element. Come into a recognition of the fifth element so that you are fluent in all other elements and whatever you're guided to at any given moment. Because remember, the oscillation is so quick. I might be called into elements moment by moment right
Mhm.
now, which
Mhm.
is often with me. But remember, my example of the spiral is my own deep personal dive of the combination. Remember alchemy, the combination of things. I
Mhm.
will invite the audience to just consider that for a moment. What is the combination of all elements? What can you locate when they all come into this point of convergence? And then can you put language to it? Can you describe it in a way so that you can make it, allow it to be livable and functional in your life? The more I come into this conversation I have with spirals, and see, my altar is right behind me if you're watching this on video form. And you'll notice that one of the depictions is my kupuna, my elders, my actual genetic line. And all of the vehi, or all of the adornments, are either woven in spirals.
Mhm.
And so that energetic representation is present to the place to which I hold counsel.
Mhm.
And so it inspires me to relax, become limber more and more into that conversation of what spirals is for me. So this is a great invitation for, and have fun. Have
Mhm.
fun. Take all the elements and then just bring them together. What is the result when you bring all those known elements, or I should say classical, right? The four
Mhm.
classical elements:
Right.
air, fire, water, earth. All those classical elements, what results from their merging?
Mm. And you'll probably find, that you're going to gravitate towards one more than the other. You might gravitate towards the earth more than the water, more towards the air, more than the fire. And then alchemizing what it is that you need to do to balance and harmonize yourself. Right.
Yeah.
And so I for sure have, different elements within my home, whether it's candles that are burning, water that's flowing, the garden outside, standing out and listening to the birds singing in the morning and feeling the wind. But that's important for me to have all of the elements kind of vibrant. And I do need more yin energy sometimes, more feminine energy. But when I need that pranic, masculine, raw energy of yang, where I need to move things, I need that fire energy to come in. And so, whether we're using our own individual body practice, somatic practice, whether it is moving the spine through yoga or swimming or movement or somatic fascia release or whatever you're doing, because you're going to have all of those practices. There's hundreds of practices. Just do a practice that moves the spine.
Yeah.
You're discover when you open up and go into the subtle body that you're going to start communicating with another level of yourself, which is your ancestors within. But I want to go back to, and maybe this is our last point, is these sacred sites and going into nature as an activation of alchemizing. Can you share a little bit about that?
Mm. Yeah, you know, I feel like we call them vahipana or sacred sites. And vahipana, you know, they behave much like human beings. That it's there's codes. There's imprints that either can activate you, or perhaps it's because you will activate that vahipana, that sacred site.
Mm.
It's kind of like a game of chess.
Mm.
In this game of chess as well. It's like where are you most needed, or where is your presence most relevant right now? And you know, like since the Paleolithic and beyond that, we were nomadic people. And I feel like we're nomadic for a very specific reason, because we were meant to move with the natural order of things. You know, sedentary has caused so much disruptions for us beginning in the Neolithic era. And you know, the great thing that defined the Neolithic era is private property.
Mm-hmm.
And that began this obsession and this fascination with possession,
Mm-hmm.
possession culture. We had not experienced possession culture. And I can even go all the way back to Mu. Okay. And that doesn't show up at all, possession culture. And
Right.
so since the Neolithic era, we have been engaging in this disruption known as possession culture, which has made us so sedentary that it feels sterile, many of us.
Yeah.
Perhaps we feel very sterile. We're not touched by life anymore. We're not in wonder and awe. Feel it like this. When I look at an infant's eyes, you know how they sparkle?
Mm-hmm.
It's because the child is in true wonder and awe, because everything is so new, and that their exchange, their experience is constantly being refreshed. Now,
Mm-hmm.
for you and I as human beings, when we are so sedentary, we lose that sparkle because we don't have that refreshment
Mm-hmm.
that is occurring. And so even, you know, when you unlock that spinal cord, the spinal cord is also going to behave like this kind of dowsing rod that will
Mm-hmm.
take you to different areas. Like for me, you know, I've curated my life in a way to which I literally wake up in the morning, I step outside, and I just allow wherever I need to be to pull me. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how I behave. I go there. Sometimes I'm like, I have no idea. It's okay. I
Yeah.
just go there. And then
Mm-hmm.
that's how I communicate. That's how I engage with not just other human beings, but also with the natural world. Did that answer your question?
Yes and no. But I love it anyway. I feel like, yes, going into practicing with self and then learning our na'au, learning our inner wisdom and our pico point, and then letting that kind of drive our life is so important. And then witnessing the reflection in nature in these sacred site activations is also important. And like you said, it's going to be a give and take. You might be there to activate it. It might be there to activate you. It's a co-creation. And I feel it's very important for people to be open to living this way, where we don't need to know in our cognitive mind, the linear mind, logical mind, that that is what's driving us into our accomplishments in life. And this is actually being guided through our pico. Like we are guided, we are pulled into our life through
Yeah.
this inner knowing and this inner wisdom. And it is a knowing, right? It's what we call in Buddhism like an interbeing space where we're so connected to everything around us and the cosmology of who we are that we allow that to kind of be our guiding force, our hokulea, right? And then we experience life through that. But you will be called, I feel, when you're going through this healing and this activation journey to certain places. And certain places have a tremendous amount of mana, or what we call power. And they might be places like Hawaii. They might be places like Peru. They might be places like Stonehenge, They might be places like Egypt. They might be places like the ocean. And so really being open to where you're being called. And I think that is one big step that we make when we start to listen to our path, meaning, okay, we hear the calling. We hear the calling of nature and we hear the calling of this place to me. And it might not make sense to me in a linear concept in our mind, but this calling is so strong and I feel like I need to go. And then how fortunate we are to have the cultures that are living in these special places be so welcoming and open to receive us. And then what do we need to do? We need to do reciprocity and give back to those
Mhm.
special places. So that kind of pulls me back into this full circle moment of, yes, we're calling in our ancestors and our lineage, but also we're giving reverence in the end. And so
Yeah,
can you speak about that as we close?
sure. I'll share it like this. We in Mu Hawaiian culture, we have something really similar to the weighing of the heart in Egypt. Uh, Ours is more specifically the measurement of the heart. And at the time of the hala, of the transfiguration, we go to a place called the lanai, or it's the limbo. And at the place of the limbo, there's something called a hokupo okoi, or star council. And what they do is they measure the heart. And the measurement of the heart, in order for passage into the hala, it's measured by your contribution. Your contribution.
Mm,
And of course, this is for every sovereign being to determine what their contribution is. Some people's contribution is going to be a big production. They're going to have incredible reach and power on our planet. Others, it's more subtle. Others are monks.
mhm,
That's our contribution, how we're energetically offering, augmenting this reality.
mhm,
And so I want to bring this back to when we engage in plagiarism and fraud culture. Here's what happens when we go to the hokupo okoi. They're going to take the heart and they're going to say, we've already measured this heart.
mhm.
This is not your heart. This is forged. You will have to go back, return, do the cycle over and over and over again until you show up with your own heart.
Ay, so beautiful. And it also, it brought up so many visualizations just listening to you of this last component, which is what my whole thesis is about, which is compassionate action or sacred altruism. Or in Buddhism, we have it as, or in Hinduism, it's seva, selfless service, and in Buddhism, it's the bodhicitta, like of really taking that bodhisattva vow, that you're of service to others. And like you said, just whether it's Ma'at in Egypt, it's Isis, it's Kuan Yin, it is all of these beautiful feminine archetypes of the Venus energy of the heart. We have this opportunity, are you as light as a feather or as heavy? Like, is your consciousness, how pure is your consciousness when you're going through the exit through the heart, as you make your way to the cosmos? And right now I feel we are at that point where people are consciously choosing to live their life from their hearts, consciously choosing to really embrace what it is to be heart-centered leaders, heart-centered business people, heart-centered employees, heart-centered partners, heart-centered community members, and we're moving out of the egoic space into the heart space. And so I feel very strongly about this because my research is to chart this and to find the communities that are doing this. And there's so much for us to learn. But for those that are listening right now, as you're learning to alchemize yourself and you're recognizing the importance of who your lineage is, what your gifts are, how you're meant to bring these gifts into the world, it'll converge through the heart. And we can go into that like so much. There's so much there, but it is like the sacred cross, right? I mean, we could go into so much there. but your greatest, most purest expression of self is going to be when you're coming from your heart space. And so, anything else you want to say about that, brother?
Oh, what you said is just beautiful, exquisite. And yes, reorientation into the heart. It's going to be a beautiful journey. Maybe for some, it's going to be a great saga. It was for me, I had to go through things to once again come back into the relevance and my ability to cherish my heart as well, and not to treat the space of the heart as some kind of trend or an assignment, but
Mhm.
truly that which I rest into. It's an unlimited source of support, and to allow yourself to rest into that. I invite everyone, and what that looks like for you, for each individual, is going to be so incredibly different. Remember, we live in a world of contrast. Resource it.
Mhm.
Resource contrast.
Mhm. And also, it's important to recognize that we don't need to copy and paste. We're not here to copy and paste. Like, let's
Yeah.
move out of whole that whole paradigm of copy and paste. Like, we want to know who you truly are, what you're here to experience in this life. And so, yes, we're going to have to sometimes mimic and hijack for us to remember, and that's okay. And then let it go. Like, honestly, don't hold on to a false sense of identity. It's okay to let that go and let your true self come up, and then show the world who that is, because we need to have, we need to have the role models up there who can show us what's possible, because we don't know. And then we need to have those that are trying at every level, and all of it is okay. But just recognize when you're on that bridge, and you're ready to make that leap into the heart space, actually, and become that rainbow warrior, is letting go of all parts of that old self that
Yeah.
thinks it needs to hold on to that identity and attach to an identity, which is a false belief system and an illusion. I hope I'm
Mhm.
making sense.
Yeah, yeah, and ultimately just exhausting too.
Yeah.
It's an exhausting system as well. So, when we even feel into the practicality that it just doesn't feel good, why do
Yeah.
we continue to do that? And so it's a choice point. We're at a bifurcation right now. I feel humanity. And so choose wisely, right? That's what all cultures will say. That's what Michael Puna would say. That's what everyone would say. You go back into the oldest doctrines, choose wisely.
Mhm. Mhm. Thank you. Thank you for that. And is there a beautiful chant you can share with us as we close the space? And we usually open with ceremony and we end with ceremony. And I realized we didn't do that. But is there anything that you'd like to share from your kapuna for this space right now?
Yeah, actually, I work with Poa Ehu Ehu fern medicine. And in fern medicine, there are 103 Hawaiian ferns that correlate to 103 emotions. And the emotional quality that's most fluent with alchemy is magic, is emotional magic. And there's a fern called La'akea Lama, and La'akea Lama holds the codes to magic. And so it speaks beautifully into alchemy. And so I would love to transfer a channeling of La'akea Lama to this audience.
Beautiful.
Deeper, there is the magenta, and a clap forces the world into light. I have shifted into so many things I carry no resemblance. The concept of attachment is profane. The wizard, the witch, the fern, and the stone are dimensions privy of energy fastened to collapse. You will never truly know me. The deepest essence of my power is to remain forever mysterious and can only press you within awe to no end. Aloha.
Aloha. That is such a beautiful representation of the power of alchemy right there, brother, is to articulate the unseen. Yeah, it's some magical stuff. Oh my gosh, I love it. And for all of you listening, please go to pohala.net. That is um, Keone's website, the Pohala Hawaiian Botanicals website, and I'll give more information about that as if you want to learn more about fern medicine and all the incredible things that he does and how he's here to really shift consciousness on this planet right now and forever, always in your heart, and you're always in my heart. And I thank you for this beautiful time together and just sharing our Ike, what we know, our knowledge, but what we know right here, right now. And may it be inspirational to all those that are listening, wherever they might be on the planet. And may they reclaim their sovereignty and reclaim who they are so they can be a beautiful force of light and love on this planet. We need this so much right now. So if you are listening, just know that we are here supporting you, and your ancestors are here supporting you on so many realms and ways that are unfathomable, sometimes unimaginable, how much love and support that we are all getting. And never, ever, ever forget that. You are an embodiment of their love and their creation and their hope and their beautiful faith of what it is to be a human. So mahalo keakua, and thank you so much, brother, for being here today with me. I love you deeply, and aloha ma.
I love you, my sister. Aloha ma.